It's time for Recipe of the Day. Happy Thanksgiving to all of my Canadian friends and family. Now, if you've ever thought of making homemade pumpkin puree for pumpkin pies using either store-bought pumpkins or garden-grown pumpkins, this episode is for you. Years ago, my mom tried making pumpkin pies from fresh pumpkins that she cooked herself, and she said it was awful, and she swore she would never do it again. And so I had not tried it until more recently. Now, I have tried it. I've done a taste test comparison of a pie cooked exactly the same way, one made with canned pumpkin and one made with fresh cooked pumpkin. And I've done the taste test, and I can tell you that the canned pumpkin is better. It has a better flavor. The fresh pumpkin, it's a little bit denser. I actually think I like that texture better, but the flavor is way better on the canned pumpkin. Canned pumpkin is just pure pumpkin puree in a can, nothing else added to it, and it's very much more cost effective than buying a pie pumpkin, and also it's more convenient because actually making your own pumpkin puree from fresh pumpkins is kind of a pain. So I am advising that you just use canned pumpkin, that 100% pure pumpkin, not the pumpkin pie filling, the pure pumpkin. But if you want to try it, it's always fun to try something new in the kitchen, of course, and sometimes, a pie pumpkin just lands in your lap and you want to know what to do with it. This is what you do. The most important thing you need to know about doing this is that you're trying to get as much liquid out of the pumpkin as possible. You want that nice, dense texture. Any liquid that you add to this situation is going to make it wetter. So every step that we go through is actually about trying to get the liquid out of the pumpkin. So first of all, you do need the right kind of pumpkin. You don't want those big ones that they sell at Halloween that you're carving into jack-o'-lanterns. That doesn't have very much flesh, isn't as sweet. They're much smaller and denser, and they're usually labeled sugar pumpkins or pie pumpkins. The first thing you're going to do is preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. We are roasting the pumpkin. We don't want to simmer it in water because then we'd be adding liquid to the situation, right? Okay, so your oven is preheating. You're going to slice the pumpkin in half lengthwise, stem to base. I leave the stem on. It just kind of looks pretty and is easier, no extra cutting. But if you want to, you can trim off the top and then chop all the way down through it. Either way is fine. Then you're going to scoop out the seeds and all those stringy bits. Now, you don't get as many seeds from this as you do from the jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, but you can absolutely roast them. They're delicious that way. I will link to how to roast pumpkin seeds in case you want to do that. But yeah, you're getting all those stringy guts and seeds out of there, and either you're going to roast them or you're going to toss them out. Then line a baking sheet with parchment paper or a silicone baking mat. You can use foil as well, and you're placing your pumpkin halves cut side down on the baking sheet. Then they go into the oven for about 45 minutes. You should be able to pierce the pumpkin all over with a fork easily, and then that will tell you that they are done. Then you can let the pumpkin cool for a bit so that you can handle it more easily. 15 minutes will do, and then you're scooping all the flesh out, leaving the skin behind. Scoop it into the bowl of a food processor or a good strong blender. That's going to work as well. Then you're going to process that pumpkin into a puree. The most important thing is to resist the urge to add any water here. You really just want to pulse it and keep scraping the sides and pulse and try your best to just get it to keep going without needing to add any liquid. There is a lot of liquid in there, and as it starts to process, that liquid is going to release and it's going to get moist enough. You're actually going to be trying to get rid of that liquid in a bit, so you don't want to add more water here. So just keep pulsing and scraping, pulsing and scraping. Once it's moving well, then you can let it go for a couple of minutes to get a nice smooth puree. Once it's nice and smooth, you're going to drain the liquid out. The easiest way to do this is to get a fine mesh sieve, a strainer, and line it with cheesecloth, a couple layers of cheesecloth, and then transfer all of your pumpkin puree into there. Put the sieve over a bowl so that there's something catching that liquid, and then you're just going to leave it in there to drain for an hour or two, quite a while. You basically want it to be that when you unwrap the cheesecloth, the pumpkin inside is holding its shape. It's like pressed together in the shape that the cheesecloth had it in. There's actually a really good picture of what this should look like in the instructions that I'm going to be linking to for this. It's on the Cookful. It's for preparing your own pumpkin. And down under step number 7, you'll see what I mean, that when you undo that cheesecloth, the pumpkin puree has the shape still of that cloth. Like even the little lines from the cloth are in it. It's just held its shape so much because so much liquid has come out of it. And then at that point, it is ready to use. So you've gotten all the liquid out of it. It is cooked. It is ready. The only thing you need to know is how much to use. So a can of pumpkin, a 15-ounce can of pure pumpkin is almost exactly 2 cups of puree. It's short by about 2 tablespoons. So anytime that a recipe calls for a 15-ounce can of pumpkin, you're good to go in with 2 cups. If you have a recipe calling for the larger can of pumpkin, the 29-ounce can of pumpkin, that's going to be about 3.5 cups of your puree. And then you can just use it anywhere that any recipe calls for canned pumpkin. You can use your puree. You can put it in a sealed container for up to 5 days in the fridge, or you can freeze it for 3 months. It might get a little bit liquidy in either the fridge or the freezer, so you might want to strain it again just to get rid of that extra liquid, but it's totally going to taste great and be perfect for using. Well, except I still think you should skip all that and just use the canned pumpkin. But if you have a pumpkin and you want to do this, now you know how. I'm going to put a link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is October 14th of 2024. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day and a very happy Canadian Thanksgiving. Let's get cooking.